You ever cheated on someone else?
Yes.
Why?
I think it makes it easier when you got cheated on.
I was at the gym this morning and the guy who knows my channel well asked me, Mr. Paul, what is it that really disturbs you about life as you grow older? And I had to think about it for a minute, but I immediately just said, the way society has normalized bad behavior.
It's the same night on Christmas Eve.
Were they friends?
Yeah, they were friends.
Do they know?
No. Yeah, do they?
They don't know.
No, they don't know. I had a with my best friend and my fiance's best friend, so
then fuck 3 men in the same night.
Wow, how was that? I like that for you, by the way. I just gotta say that.
Thank you.
So you fucked 3 men together or separately?
Separately.
If you had to rank them in order from good to bad, what would you say?
Ryan, you get the top. Josh, you get the bottom. Whack. I stopped. And Max, you get sub-middle, but the reason why Ryan gets top because he made me come.
About a month and a half ago that I am expecting.
Wow.
So I do want us to be together.
Bro, are you serious?
I want us to be together. He hurt me too much, Your Honor.
You serious right now?
Yep. I'm sorry. I hurt both of you guys, but I want to continue my life.
Oh, you like my brother, man.
And let me explain what I mean by that. The society that we live in is amazing in the Western world right now. And the reason we've gotten this far is because my father and his father and his father's father have created an environment where we can strive and live in harmony. And now that we're in harmony, now we're trying to make these new rules for relationships and for marriages and for how we call the two genders. We've coming up with this whole new crazy concept about life. What we know for sure, because it has been proven, because we're now here, is that the old way worked. So now we're entering unproven ground based on feelings. Everything is based on feelings.
Why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
Well, firstly, I mean, it was.
Well, I'm serious. If I can identify as anything without any need to prove I'm actually what that is, why can't I, on International Women's Day, say I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian?
I think taking it to a kind of absurd status.
I think that's
talking about quite a
with
strong
respect, I think that
change.
you'd already opened the absurdity door by saying it is limitless. You can do what you like. Anyone can say I'm a woman. So I simply ask you, why can't I?
I mean, this point kind of ridicules trans people to an extent.
Actually, I think what you said ridicules trans people. Tommy, I mean, look, I don't see why, if it's limitless, I can't just say I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian. Because that is where limitless self-identity takes us. It means that male rapists can say they're women and get into female prisons. It means I can say I'm a two-spirit penguin or a black lesbian, and why can't I? Because that is where it...
This whole new concept of understanding human behavior is simply based on the fact that we are now moving more into a matriarchal society. And I don't see it ending well, to be honest. I think there will be a new reset. Here's the stupid part about this. The only reason we're here is because other men allow it. This whole feminist movement would never work if other men didn't fall for the bullshit. Other men weren't forced to become feminized.
First day, I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19, because 6 parents switched out of the class because they saw me, and they were like, there's no freaking way, before I even got a word in. Do I think that it is okay for a parent to see me and go, not around my kid? No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line.
It's still the right of the parent to make that decision as to whether or not they want their child to learn from you.
Okay.
Like, it's still that parent's right. Like, you can disagree with their motivations, their motives, their ideas, but it's still their child.
Other men that weren't born to single mothers, there is a massive destruction that has occurred with the genders, and I don't think it's good for society at all. There is only one basic truth in every single species. We want to reproduce. We want our DNA to survive. That is why every single species that exists on Earth understand the role between males and females. Only the strongest males survive. Those are the males that get to procreate with the other females. Every single species. Humans are the only species where the genders actually fight against each other. It's bizarre. Gender roles have now become so undefined. This whole idea of gender fluidity has now become a thing. There's less kids being born. Female are told that they don't need a man. Please tell me which other species does this to each other. We're the only ones that do this shit. And we're supposed to be the intelligent ones. Make that make sense. Tell me I'm wrong. Every single species have adapted and evolved just to be able to reproduce. We're the only species that is going the opposite direction. We're the species that are destroying ourselves so that we don't reproduce. Please tell me how that makes sense. There are civilized societies that are dying because they're not reproducing enough. They're not having enough babies. You don't believe me? Check out Korea, South Korea. Check out Japan.
Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has warned that the declining birth rate is putting the future of the country at risk. Japan's estimated to have had fewer than 800,000 births last year. In the 1970s, that figure was more than 2 million. Well, Nobuko Kobayashi is a divorced single woman living in Tokyo, and she told me why many Japanese women are choosing not to have children.
Well, every decision about having a child or not is very personal, so I don't think my reason applies to everyone. But I do think that there's a general reasons. Maybe I can distill into three. So one is a financial reason, because tuition and after-school costs a lot. So having a child is financially burdensome for people. Second, I would say, is a career reason, and that applies a little bit to me as well, because the prime time for women to have children, that's also the prime time to advance your career. So you put off having a children to advance your career. Thirdly, and I think this is the under-investigated area, I think people today have many life priorities. So marriage is one of the priorities, but not as high as before. Having children, not as high as before. And there are many competing priorities for your time.
These are two dead societies. There's no coming back for those societies. All other European countries are facing the same problem. Why do you think 5 years ago, just before COVID, Germany wanted to import so many immigrants?
Each train from Hungary or Austria carries hundreds more, all near the end of long, often horrific journeys, the relief on their faces telling the story.
Syrian.
Syrian.
Je suis Syrian.
Et où en Syria?
Syria, en Damascus.
Bavaria alone is taking in over 2,000 people a day. The contrast with how they were treated in places like Hungary, astonishing. To being handed sweets and toys.
I really appreciate how Germany is able to welcome these people and how friendly people are. And there are some countries like Hungary and maybe even Great Britain that I don't quite understand, because this is a crisis concerning all Europe or all the world.
On arrival, there are medical checks for those who want them, then buses and trains to nearby welcome centres where they're registered and processed. Some are then making their own way to friends and family elsewhere. Chancellor Merkel hailed the generosity of her people, saying Germany is now associated with hope.
Because they realize that their society is dying because women are having kids way too late. The natural course of reproduction has stopped in all civilized societies around the world.
I think one of the biggest risks to civilization is the low birth rate and the rapidly declining birth rate.
There aren't enough babies. That's the warning coming from the richest man in the world. On top of everything Elon Musk is doing, like leading Tesla and SpaceX, the premier entrepreneur of our generation is going out of his way to sound the alarm over a massive problem facing mankind: the collapse of civilization due to declining birth rates. In 2020, at least partially due to COVID-19 and the government lockdown measures, American birth rates plummeted by 4%. The largest single-year decrease in nearly 50 years, hitting their lowest levels in nearly a century. 3.6 million American babies were born in 2020. Contrast that with 3.75 million in 2019 and 4.3 million as recently as 2007. Things got even worse in 2021, which was the first year since the 1930s in which the US population grew by fewer than 1 million people. And it's not like American society is getting more stable as couples have less babies. Today, only 18% of American households feature married parents with children, down from over 40% in 1970. Americans are also living alone at a higher rate than ever. The percentage of adults in the US living with a spouse is at 50%, down from 87% in 1960. Now, there are plenty of possible explanations for this trend. Analysts and commentators have pointed towards declining rates of religion, higher living expenses, prioritizing careers over family, and the expansion of LGBTQ ideology. Abortion also plays a major role.
This, my friends, is something that you guys got to understand. We males and females, we have to work it out. We have now reached a point where a lot of women don't see themselves as reproductive organisms because they're trying to become men. Tell me how that makes sense. They don't even want to be called women. You can't even define what a woman is. Tell me how that makes sense. Which other species do you know fight their own gender identity? Every single other species on earth work together as males and females to reproduce, to bring their next genetic line into existence. And they even sacrifice themselves so that newborn will survive. That is the order of things. That is the order of life. That is the order of our very existence. But we humans fight that.